excited to be able to kick off this first panel of the National Summit on Dual Mission Institutions in Higher Education. And Senator Millner gave me a good hint, which she always often does, is maybe you ought to say something about what dual mission is. We assume you all know. You're going to hear a lot more about it. But basically, dual mission is an open access institution, how we define it, an open access institution where students can earn a certificate, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a master's degree. And so they can move through the same institution, whatever their path is, many different places they can exit or enter, but that's what kind of a common definition that we use. Well, this evening, we're really pleased to have a very distinguished panel this evening. I'm going to introduce each of them and then just let each of them take their turn. And then at the end, if we have a little time, I've got a couple questions. And on your table are some Post-it notes. Feel free to write down ideas, suggestions, questions. Those will be gathered up at the end of dinner and will be used somehow, somewhere in the summit tomorrow. I'm not totally clear on all the details, but I know they will be used, and we wanted to get your thoughts and ideas. Well, Governor Herbert, of course, is the governor of the great state of Utah. He took office in 2009 after serving 5 years as lieutenant governor. So he is quickly approaching the decade mark as governor of Utah. He previously was elected and served 14 years on the Utah County Commission here in Utah County. So 28 years of public service. And it's wonderful to have Governor Herbert with us today. Let me just introduce the rest of the panelists, if I might, and then we'll come back to you, Governor. Next, after the governor concludes, we'll hear from Senator Millner. And Senator Millner represents the Ogden area. She is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, but I think partly why she's here, maybe mostly why she's here, is she's the former president of Weber State University, which has been involved in the dual mission for many years and was president at Weber State for 10 years and left that position about 5 years ago. After President Millner, Senator Millner, we'll hear from President Holland, who is approaching 10 years as president of Utah Valley University and our host this evening. We appreciate President Holland and his staff for all of the work they have done to bring this together this evening and tomorrow, and we think it'll be a very notable event. And again, we want to welcome each of you who have come from far and wide as well as close by to participate with us at the summit. And then last but not least, President Richard Biff Williams, who is president of Dixie State University. We were fortunate to be able to attract President Williams back to Utah, where he had lived and grown up, to lead Dixie State about 4 years ago. And Dixie State is our newest dual mission university in the state of Utah. So with that, let me turn it over to Governor Herbert to share some thoughts about education and economic development, and how they tie together and how it fits in with our topic today. Governor?
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I am honored to be here with all of you, and thank you, President Holland, for hosting us here on this beautiful campus here at Utah Valley University. As has been mentioned, this is my home county, this is my hometown, and I've been able to enjoy the evolution, really, that's taken place here on this campus. I mentioned a little earlier that I used to go to Westmore Elementary School just up on the east, a few blocks from here, and we'd come down during recess and catch lizards down here on what was then called the sand dunes. I used to teach here way back in the day, and I had an opportunity for 7 years to be in the evening school and teach in the business department. And I did serve as a county commissioner here, and so I've seen the change that's occurred here from just a technical college to this full-blown university, which has a community college that's embedded inside of it. So I'm excited about what we've learned in this evolution and what we're going to learn from other people. Certainly, as the governor, I want to welcome those who are coming from faraway places outside of Utah to hear today, and we look to learn and listen from what you have to offer and share some best practices with you too. I've got 4 points I wanted to make very quickly. One, we've made it as a goal in Utah to see what we can do to elevate achievement when it comes to education. And we were kind of in the middle of the pack when we came into office, and with the help of many here and others, setting a goal to be a top performing, if not the top performing education system in America. We've had some remarkable achievements. The latest numbers, in fact, show that we're the second best state when it comes to rankings for higher education according to U.S. News and World Report, second only to Massachusetts. That's a remarkable achievement for us as a state. We've been ranked the 9th best education system overall. Our NAEP scores that we have in public education put us in the top 10 in reading, language arts, and math, and in science. And our graduation rates are at an all-time high, up 11% since I took office, so I'm proud of that. And our in-state tuition, for those who know cost and access are related, we have the 3rd lowest in the nation according to the recent College Board data. So also along with that, I think an important aspect is that our student debt. When people leave college, our student debt for our people is the lowest in the nation. So people are able to get a good education and not come out with a lot of debt. The second point is that we understand the correlation, significant correlation between economic achievement and the ability for us to have long-term economic growth and education. We have become one of the best, if not the best, most diverse economy in America today. Coming out of the depths of the Great Recession and where we're at today, the last 2 years, according to the Department of Labor statistics, we've created more private sector jobs than any state in America. We know that we cannot continue to have long-term sustained economic growth and development if we don't have a labor force that has the skills necessary that align up with the demands of the global marketplace we face today. And so alignment's a big part of this effort. I appreciate that the universities we have here listed today talk about the opportunity, in fact, to make alignment and to address the issues of the needs and demands of the marketplace. And this dual mission model allows universities to be a little more nimble. And again, the marketplace, we all know, is changing dramatically. And the nimbleness and the ability to adjust, I think, is a significant aspect of one of the qualities of dual mission model that we need to explore. 95% of the jobs created during the recent economic recovery went to those that at least had some college education. So how we can target and be more specific and get better results for less cost and be more efficient is something that we need to, in fact, explore. Thirdly, I know it's important for us to make sure that cost for education is controlled. There's some ability for us to say that we cannot just let the cost continue to escalate. Cost equals accessibility, and I'm pleased to see that we're doing a lot. Our tuition costs in Utah are among the lowest in the nation, and but that continues to be a challenge, and particularly for those who are underserved, our minority communities, those that are first time maybe going to college and university studies, and so the cost aspect of this is really important. The dual mission model we have here allows us to, in fact, to reach out to those underserved populations and can help attract those into a lower cost educational system. And last but not least, part of what we're talking about here is innovation. What is the better way? What is a better way to in fact, provide educational opportunities? The dual mission model is certainly a way. It may not be the way for everybody, but it certainly is a way that I think shows great promise. And so I think we need to make sure that we carefully evaluate the pros, the cons, have the discussion, challenge each other, and see, in fact, what's working, what may not be working, and, in fact, make whatever necessary adjustments there are. So, again, I think this is a great opportunity for us to learn and to discover what's taking place in some of the universities, particularly here at UVU, which I'm most familiar with. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all the panel members and from you here in the audience as we work together for educational excellence in the state of Utah and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Senator?
So, I need to balance both of these, right? So what I'd like to do, first of all, is to say, you know, we have a system of higher education in the state, and we have research universities, which are really important in the state. We have community colleges. We have some more traditional, both 2 and 4, kind of the more traditional 2-year junior college, as well as a 4-year institution. So interesting, within the 8 institutions we have a wide variety of institutional types and missions, and I think they all serve a particular focus and purpose for the state. So that's my senator hat. Now I'm going to move to my Weber State hat, and I think that's why I was asked to talk tonight. And so I'm going to focus on Weber State. And while I'm here, President Paul Thompson is also here. I followed him as president of Weber State. He was president there for 12 years. And we also have the interim president, current interim president here. So if I don't get this right, they're going to tell on me. But I'm going to focus on Weber State, and the reason for that is Weber State was actually probably the first dual mission institution, the first one to go from that 2-year status to that 4-year status as an institution. And I think the history of that's instructive as we think about how do we get here today. So actually, in 1959, there was legislation that was co-sponsored by Francis Fowles, Frank Browning, Browning family, so some of you may know if you have any connection to northern Utah, and Haven Barlow. So Haven Barlow was having an influence on education in the state as early as 1959, and I think we all know the influence that he has had. And in that legislation, it's pretty interesting. This is Bill Millner and Governor Clyde who signed that legislation. And it authorized Weber State to begin to offer 4-year degrees. But it said, in addition thereto, which I think is important because it had been the 2-year college. What the legislature did at that time was authorize it to add to its offering the baccalaureate degree programs. And if you look at this interesting mix of degrees, you see it was vocational and technical training, industrial technology, and then the arts and sciences and business and education. So it was the full scope of thinking about what you might consider to be a more traditional community college mission, as well as the 4-year, and they envisioned there being both 2-year degrees and 4-year degrees. And so this dual mission actually goes back to the roots of that legislation in terms of what we were asked to do as an institution. Now, I want to set aside that because I came across just this last month an interesting article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, and all the higher ed people know that we all kind of watch the Chronicle almost on a daily basis. They talked about the California experience, and many of you know, if you know much about the history of education, know that in the 1960s, Clark Kerr led kind of the development of the California Higher Education Master Plan. And in that, it was really heralded as a blueprint, and we all have heard about it for decades that followed, and people said that's really should be the blueprint for what everybody does. They created 3 separate systems when they did that. They had created a community college system. They created a separate Cal State system and a separate University of California system. And their ideas, the University of California system would be the research university, and it would be the most restricted in terms of enrollment. They would probably have 8 to 10% of the students. There would be a next group of Cal State, which the kind of the regional teaching universities, 4-year institutions. They would pick up another third of the students, and the rest would go to the community colleges. But in this article, they evaluated, they said, it's a grand plan for higher education is aging. Can it be reinvented? I thought that was just kind of an interesting question to pose. And the reason they posed that question is what they found in 2009-10. So then that group of students that started the community college then, only 10% of those students were transferring within 6 years to a 4-year institution. So when you think about that handoff process and your expectations about that handoff, it's not working as well in California as people expect. And as they dug deeper in it, they said, you know, the reality is there is no system, cross-system articulation going on across the community college system to the Cal State system to the University of California system. They're operating pretty much in silos. They did not even have an associate transfer degree. that was system-wide until 2010. And that's only between the community college system and the Cal State system. Doesn't include the University of California system, which I think in this state, no one would consider anything remotely acceptable like that. So their conclusion in the article is that these differentiated missions, really what they've done with these three totally separate systems and NOVA kind of system overview, is that they've actually impeded collaboration and resulted in system silos and really haven't served the needs of the students as well as they might. I want to contrast that to some of the results. And interesting, that was in the 60s and our work was in the 60s. So we're both looking at this 60 years later. If you look at Weber State and you look at associate degrees and baccalaureate degrees, and you look, and this starts from 1963-64, which would have been the first year that there would actually have been baccalaureate graduates to today. It shows you that they're roughly about 45% of the graduates at Weber State in a given year are associate degree graduates. And that's been pretty consistent over time. I can't tell you how many times in my role as president that people would say to me, "You can't keep that up." Well, it's part of the DNA of the institution. Steve Nat'l he was president before me, and he was serving at Dixie State University when they became the four-year institution. And Steve would kind of point to the Weber State example always and say, yes, you can, and yes, we have an example of an institution that's doing it in the state. If you look at the graduating classes, and it's probably hard to see all the elements of this slide, but you will see that array of graduates at the associate degree level, baccalaureate degree level, and master's degree level that was in that original legislation where it asked us to keep focused on career education as well as the arts and science and professional education in areas like business and education. And so you see that the institution over time has stayed true to that. But what's really important, I think, from a student standpoint is the students that receive their associate degrees, that kind of matriculation from associate to baccalaureate matriculation, 62% of the students at Weber State move from that associate degree to that baccalaureate degree program. As compared to what you saw in California, where you saw 10% moving from the 2 to the 4-year program. And I think nationwide that average is somewhere in the 20% range. And it's that handoff process to other institutions that makes that particularly challenging in other systems. And in addition to that 62%, there are about 12% that are transferring to other 4-year institutions within our system. And I think that's partly the credit to the system-wide articulation that we have going on. If you look at the baccalaureate degree students and say, are they able to tap into some of these same resources that we provide for the community college students? The answer is yes. We do developmental education at Weber State University because of that 2-year kind of community college mission. But our baccalaureate degree students also benefit from that opportunity to participate in that, and over a third of the graduates actually have taken a developmental course to help them along the way. I also think there's something about that community college mission that's really focused on meeting the needs of the students in your area, in your region, that keeps you more nimble and flexible in terms of thinking about scheduling so that students can access that. So if you think about evening courses, which is what used to be, evening and weekend used to be what flexible scheduling was. Now it's thinking about online learning, it's thinking about hybrid learning, et cetera. But part of that kind of focus on meeting student and community needs is part, I think, what helps drives us in staying flexible as an institution. Then people will say, well, but what about costs? What does that mean for students in terms of tuition? What does that mean in terms of costs for the state? And I think what you can see is those dual mission institutions, if you compare the cost, it's kind of right in between our community college and our 4-year institutions. And if you average that out over a 4-year period, We know that we have really good outcomes in our dual mission institutions, and if you average that, the cost for the student's about the same. And if you look at the cost to the state, I think you'd see that the cost to the state is a little more than it is for our community colleges, but it's less than it is for our four-year institution. And so from the state standpoint, it's really, we're able to provide both that 2- and 4-year. And you think about it, with one campus infrastructure, one set of administrative systems, computer systems, et cetera, and that helps to keep our costs down. So why does this work? I think it's because there's seamless articulation from 2 to 4. Students don't have to start over. They don't have to repeat courses. They have a very seamless experience. We have academic support for everyone at all levels. They don't have to reorient to the campus environment when they think about making that change from the 2 to the 4, and they're not reapplying again. It's a very natural kind of support system that's provided for them. They know where things are. They know faculty on the campus. They've got their support system embedded. It's truly very student and community focused, and it's cost effective for students. And I think for that reason, it's why 60 years later you still see all of the elements of that dual mission at that institution. So I think that our students benefit, our communities benefited, and the states benefited. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. That was great. President.
Thank you. So the governor has given us a wonderful sort of the Utah's the backdrop of what we're doing here. I'm sure this doesn't sound like it's working, but let's do. Oh, there we go. And I think the idea through this panel, as we've talked about it, Senator Millner has given us this wonderful kind of historical development of the model with Weber pioneering that. I'll give you go kind of a deeper dive on a current example in terms of just the practical nature of how we've done it. And then President Williams is on the front end and someone wrestling with moving into the future on this. So in terms of the story of UVU, as we play off the theme of stories here in the spirit of LeVar Burton. And how about LeVar Burton? Wasn't that great? Yeah. So the story of UVU starts in 1941 as part of the war effort. There was a need to develop electricians and welders and give some post-secondary training. These were the old fairgrounds down in Provo, just the next town over. They kind of begged, borrowed, and stole from the county and used that. The faculty and the teachers kind of built the school themselves, and we've been doing something similar ever since. And started with this Central Utah Vocational School, a little post-secondary training. And then we moved into the Utah Trade Technical Institute very shortly after that. And then the Utah Technical College was what we were known for a long time in this community. And then became Utah Valley Community College in the late 80s. Again, always being responsive to the community around us. And then not long after that, we were empowered to do very limited numbers of four-year degrees and became Utah Valley State College, as you see our fifth seal there. And then we became Utah Valley University in 2008. That's our sixth seal. We've thought about a seventh seal. But we wondered about what that might look like. We've experimented a little bit. That was one idea. Or perhaps the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse itself. So we're going to stick with our sixth seal. But the question became, what kind of a university are we going to become? So that was in 2008. I showed up in 2009. And I'd come from a very traditional kind of research-oriented background in terms of where I was trained and what I was doing at my current institution. I think there was probably some suspicion or thought that that was the direction we might go. but I had a very important early conversation with Senator Millner and Steve Nat'l, Dixie, but right along with that, we started to have a lot of conversations with the community, the campus, thinking about the context of where we were, and we came up with these core themes. These were things that came through as we listened, but also did the analysis, and that what we needed to do above all was be focused on student success. If you just really set aside for the moment U.S. News and World Rankings, anything else, but what is it that we cared the most about? And it was helping students get ready for life, industry, civic contribution. And if that was really what we were concerned about, how could we do this in the best way possible? And there were three themes that emerged from that. One is to be inclusive, to reach students where they are, regardless of background, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of their kind of culture or race or anything else, and even their levels of academic preparation. In the spirit of LeVar, talking about if we can move beyond the sort of the birthright of literacy, that, you know, that in this day and age, everybody needs some form of post-secondary training if they're going to function in society. So we wanted that to be open, but we also wanted this to be a serious place, with standards and rigor and expectation. And we also had discovered the power of an engaged learning pedagogy, of moving to the applied and the practical, and those three things would work together. Well, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but the serious and the inclusive played out for us then in terms of this dual mission model. That on one hand, we would not jettison what had been our historic, more or less community college mission, that we would stay open admissions, that we would continue to promote and develop a 2-year and certificate programs, that we would reach out to underserved populations, that we would try to keep tuition low, all the hallmarks of a comprehensive community college, that was key to remaining inclusive in many ways. But part of our serious mission meant that we had to expand into bachelor's and master's degree programs. We had to invest heavily in full-time faculty. We needed to have some degree of standards and enrollment standards, even as we wanted to stay open admissions. And so the question became, well, how do you do that, and can you make this work together? And again, we had a wonderful model in Weber to look at, and we had our own thoughts about how we could do our unique version of that here. And so this is kind of a story now about the choices we made and what we wrestled with and how that's played out. And for us, I think in many respects, the proof is in the pudding. I heard the governor talking earlier today about the power of people voting with their feet. This is our growth rate over the last decade or so. You see a little bit of a dip in that growth rate. That's actually because of change the LDS Church made in missionary age service that sent an outflux of students all over the state, but they've come back. But students are coming, they're staying, they're having a great experience here. And here's what we did to bring those two things together. And the first is that we wrestled with this idea of open admissions, but also enrollment standards. And we came up with something we called structured enrollment. So we start with retaining open admissions. You apply, you get in, basically. But then we set an earlier admissions deadline. When I first came, you could sort of, in the spirit of a community college, you could apply, and 3 weeks into the semester, you could still be signing up for courses. That's a very hard, not very serious way to start an academic year, so we moved that up. And then we instituted enrollment standards. Now, enrollment standards didn't mean if you didn't hit those, you weren't admitted. It's open admissions, you were admitted. But if you didn't hit the 2.5 GPA and the 19 ACT, you could, let me reverse that. If you did hit those enrollment standards, then you were free to participate in any 1-, 2-, or 4-year program you wanted. You were free to go anywhere you want within the institution. If you didn't hit that, though, then we get a lot more aggressive with you and say you've got to have mandatory orientation. We've got our academic counselors and our faculty trained to work with students to say, Yes, you're welcome. We want you here, but we've got to help you get ready. So stay focused on a 1 or a 2-year program. You can have your pick within that realm. And then let's get you in your remedial education and in sequence and require that. And then if you can establish a kind of a C average for a year in those courses and beyond, then you're able to matriculate on up into the upper division program. This for us was a real breakthrough in terms of remaining inclusive, everybody welcome, open admissions, but creating that serious climate we needed, especially in the upper division courses, the university courses and whatnot. Some interesting data that we noticed early on, that first bar chart, if you will, there was before open enrollment, before structured enrollment. And what you see is that this is first week enrollments and then end of semester enrollments. And before we instituted structured enrollment, we lost almost 1,000 students who kind of came in and left through a revolving door. But after instituting structured enrollment, now the first thing you might see in that next year is like, well, you went down. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But again, that was that LDS missionary age change thing going on. The more important thing to look at is the delta between the dark green and the light green. And what you see is by the first of the semester, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. I can't see those numbers from here. So maybe you can. But you can see that the delta is that by the end of the semester, there are more students than there were at the beginning of the semester. So virtually everyone who came through the door is there by the end of the semester, and we picked up some people on the block. Now, it's going to still take us a few more years for this to show up in terms of our retention rates and our graduation rates, but you can imagine already the efficiencies for the administration, for students, as opposed to the system we were on before with the 800 to 900 students in and out the door before we instituted this. The other thing that we did is we made an early commitment to say we've got to keep tuition low. The tendency for universities is to become more and more expensive, and so we've really got to work on controlling costs. Now, this was a kind of a two-pronged strategy. One is by showing that we were nimble, as has been said, responding to the workforce. We were able to generate public support. The legislature, I think, could see what we were doing. They've invested in us. But at the same time, we've said we also want to do our part to really control costs. We've stayed focused on a teaching mission requiring 12 hours per semester, not avoiding that kind of research creep. We also have watched very carefully our staff and faculty ratios, and we have a very public budgeting process. And every aspect, virtually every dollar that we spend on this campus has to be publicly justified against this dual mission model and our values of serious, inclusive, engaged. And we make lots of strategic choices as a result. So one of the big things that was expected as we became a university, start a football team. We did not do that. We did start men's soccer. We're the only Division I men's soccer team in the state, and for pennies on the dollar, we have a great fall sport for our student body compared to the expense of football. So, but the idea here is that we've got to keep tuition low, and we do. The governor's responded to it. According to College Board, third lowest average tuition rates in the nation. This is UVU's tuition for the year. And we're the 65th lowest net price institution in the nation. The idea here is that, again, that's in the spirit of what Ann said about some of our costs. Yes, a little higher than traditional community college tuition, but not at all as much as what you would pay for many universities around the nation, maybe some of the places where you all are coming from. So this is something we have to continually watch and wrestle with. There may come a time where we need to do a differential tuition, where we charge less for the lower division and more for upper division, and we're constantly asking and running the numbers on that. But the one thing that's a common thread for us is that we work relentlessly to keep tuition as low as possible for that point of access. A third point is that you've got to have someone in the institution who owns this organizationally. You can have all the rhetoric in the world, you can have all the mission statements in the world, but unless you've got someone who really champions this, it's very difficult because the tendency and the pull is towards the university side. And so we really experimented with this, and we created a community college office so that people could know where to go to get a brochure or see programs. And then we realized, well, we need more than an office. We need someone to do programming. So we created the Office of Community College Programming. And then we realized it was buried too far down in the organizational chain. So we made there a senior director. That still wasn't senior enough. So we created a senior director. A longer title, that's right. And the idea here was also that we didn't want to, we discovered, the part of the reason we changed the title is we didn't want to pigeonhole it to say, well, that's the office that does community college programming. This needed to be embedded throughout the institution so that all of the colleges, all of the deans, everywhere in academic affairs, student affairs, people owned the community college mission along with what we're doing. But again, even there, we just continued to elevate it, and so we now have an associate vice president for community engagement and economic development. And so this is Jessica Gilmore. I think she's here somewhere. Jessica, raise your hand right here. And Jessica comes with years and years of experience from a community college in Washington. That was the other criteria, someone who has explicitly a community college background, who's not just responsible for community college programming per se, and marketing of that, although that's part of it, but community partnerships, the continuing education. You see the list of things that are in her portfolio, outreach with our K-16 Alliance. And as an associate vice president, she sits at the table with deans, with the vice president for academic affairs, and has the voice and the mission to say this has got to be protected and promoted, move forward. So that was a very important development for us. Data-driven expansion of CTE. We look at all sorts of data from Bureau of Labor, statistics, burning glass. We have these are all of our industry advisory groups. We're taking pulse all the time of what we need to do in terms of developing programs like a good community college would. What are the workforce development areas? What's the curriculum they need? What are the degrees and the certificates we need? And that becomes an ongoing process for us. And then we take many of those programs and make them stackable credentials, starting with certificates that blend into associate's degrees, that blend into bachelor's degrees, and in the case of the IT example, eventually a master's degree. And I think in one of our panels tomorrow, Jessica will talk more about this. But this gives you a flavor of the stackable degree pathways we've established here at UVU. We're doing more every year. We'll continue to build those out. This gives a chance for students to earn a degree, work, come back if they need to, put themselves through school, reduces debt. There are a whole bunch of really powerful, positive things that come about as a result of these stackable credentials. And so that apparently concludes my my remarks. Yes, exactly. We're almost done here. That was a very subtle signal there, folks. That's what we did, and this is what we've created. And in terms of, you can see the numbers of associate's degrees and certificates we have. Yes, some have gone away, but we've added others, and we've dramatically added the certificates, even as we've remained open admissions. At the same time, we've built out bachelor's and master's programs and instituted structure enrollment. And again, it's already been alluded to. One of the things you have to do then is ask yourselves, what's the alternative for us now if we broke out the community college? And again, the part of the power of this model is the focus it gives the university. And on the university side, you can see the increase. I just know from personal experience what I call the increase in Harvard envy. That you want to look more like a research institution, and you want to have less teaching, more research. You'll want to have faculty on a higher pay scale. You're going to have all sorts of the sort of attendant things that go with that university side just continue to flourish because you've moved off of this targeted mission that, by the way, has the energy of so many of our faculty who feel a sense of kind of social justice commitment to this mission of outreach and access. And then on the community college side, if we're no longer doing that, then you've got to go find land and buildings and administrators and computers and services moving forward. And you're also going to have more leakage, I think is one of the terms that's used in the literature this day, which is what Ann was talking about not making the segue from community college to university. Just a couple of different ways of looking at the same thing of the point that Ann was making. This is our growth rate over about an 8 or 9 year period. And what you can see that's significant about this is that our greatest growth rate is coming actually in our junior and senior class. So this is not just the fact that we live in a fast-growing part of the nation. This is a testament to the mission that's working. Students are coming, they're staying, they're graduating, they're not transferring out, they are transferring in. But a lot of this is just specifically those students who come here thinking they are just a community college student and they're going to do a certificate or a 2-year degree and realize they're doing it at a university. They can compete, they like the environment, they like the Roots of Knowledge windows, they like taking a course on poetry they never had an idea about, and so they're making the most of it. And so here we are. This is still our profile. You look at 38% of our students first gen. That's actually up from the time that we've become a university. We have more first gen students today than we did 10 years ago as a percentage. And in terms of the numbers of students who are working, who are kind of forging paths, 110% increase in students of color because of our outreach. These are, again, the hallmarks of an institution that looks more like a community college in many ways, but it's happening at a university. I'll close with this, one of my favorite stories. You look at culinary arts. This is a classic community college program. When we started things in 2008, about 4% of the students in our culinary program would go on to get a 4-year degree. Now, all these years later, we're over 30% of our students who go on to get a 4-year degree. And one of our star graduates of that is Lynn Wells, who came here from rural Utah, was just going to go into the food service industry and went into the culinary program. Well, she has caught on fire with what she's doing here. She not only went on from a culinary certificate to a 4-year degree, she went on to get an MBA, and she made the U.S. Olympic gelato team. So in addition to now being one of our chef instructors, she's moved in with our family, and it's working out really well. But the Lynn Wells story I could tell you over and over again across multiple disciplines of students who come in to study aviation or in the trades or the personal financial planning or in sales or in any of these areas where we've shown that there's a workforce need for it, where they've come and they've started, worked on stackable credentials, but are competing because they're at a serious university on a national scale and doing incredible things. That, for us, is why we do what we do, and that's what we think is the power of the dual mission, because it allows us to do this on scale to the tune now of 38,000 students. It's not, as we've said, it's not the answer to all solutions. It's not without its struggles, its challenges, but we think it's a very powerful way that works for this community right now. So,
Thank you, President Holland. President Williams.
Okay, you got the right one. Well, good evening. We're from Dixie State University. I'm excited to share our story. As President Holland mentioned, we are on the front end of embracing a dual mission. And I'll just give you, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I think somebody on C8B of Southwest Airlines has a nice pair of glasses. But being an Eagle Scout, I'm prepared so I can see my stats. To give you a little bit of history, Dixie State University is the newest university in the state of Utah. We've been a university for 5 years. Prior to that, we were a junior college and a community college. And so the past 5 years, we've been focusing on trying to balance our offerings from going from a community college associate degree certificate heavy university to try and balance having baccalaureate degrees, and primarily that's for retention. We have a lot of students that come to St. George, that come to Dixie State, and they want to stay there. And so we had very few degrees, and to give you an idea what we looked like 10 years ago, and then today, you'll see that we've doubled in almost every category. So we've gone from just over 5,000 students to close to 10,000. The degrees, we went from 9 to 42, and our programs are exploding. But we wanted to do something where we're focusing heavy on the baccalaureate, but keeping that concentration on the programs that we did have and adding certificate programs. But one thing that we really wanted to focus on is how do we do that? We didn't want to add baccalaureate degree programs to add baccalaureate degree programs. And so we wanted to keep our community in mind, and our community is just as fast growing as we are. Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. Census Bureau named us as the fastest growing urban city or urban area in the United States. And one thing that I have learned the short 4 years that I've been in St. George is that the community is looking towards the university to help with the economic diversity. And so that was somewhat of a shock when I first got on campus, and they came and said, well, how are you going to build the economy? And so that is a heavy weight to have. And so we've been fortunate to be able to work with our county officials and our state officials. And so we came up with a strategic plan to how to do that. And so 4 years ago, we worked together as a campus community, as a community at large, and we worked with workforce services to find out exactly what it is that we should do and how we should mature as a university. We ended up with 6 goals, and I'm going to share with you the academic offerings. I could go on and on about each of the goals, but I thought the most pertinent to this discussion is what we did academically. And so as we backed into this, we wanted to make sure that we continue to offer the associate degree and the certificate programs, but we also wanted to identify those baccalaureate degrees. So we put an emphasis on baccalaureate degrees with a smaller emphasis on certificates and associates and a smaller emphasis on master degree programs. We collected a lot of data, and I'm going to share just a couple of slides of the data that really drove why we are doing what we are doing. And here's your healthcare opening. So Southern Utah and St. George is the healthcare hub of Southern Utah. And so you'll see that 5-county region that there's 690 jobs open. And so they're relying on us to prepare that workforce. And so these jobs can go anywhere from an individual that has a certificate in lab sciences all the way up to somebody with a master's degree in physical therapy or occupational therapy. And so our second set was looking at the technology. And if you go onto our website of our College of Science, Engineering, and Technology, they have this ticker here that shows how many tech jobs there are in a 300-mile radius. And I just took a snapshot of this, and at any given time, as I've monitored it over the last 4 years, there's about 20,000 jobs that are in that area. And so we wanted to really look at how could we provide certificates up through master degree programs that would really address those workforce shortages. The last thing that we did through our provost office is really create an academic plan. And so as we looked at STEM, as we looked at healthcare, as we looked at business, we wanted to find like universities. And so what we really discovered that we were going to look like is a polytechnic for those that are academicians or those that are not, that we focus a lot on the STEM areas. We're going to focus a lot on boosting those in areas in all ways. And so we created this map here, and this has a star for each of the polytechnic type universities in the United States. And Dixie State University is located in the southwest corner of the state there. And you can see that there's a giant hole not only in our state, but in the surrounding states. And so as we created our academic plan, we focused on those areas. So the last few years, I'm just going to share with you, 2 years ago, these are the types of programs that we added. Each of these programs started with a white paper with our faculty to really look at the needs, make sure that when somebody completes the degree that they have jobs. This year, we also added to that array, and we wanted to make sure that we also stay true to our regional comprehensive. So you'll see that we'll have an arts production program, or we'll have digital arts, digital film in there. So we're not just focused solely on the Polytechnic, but we are making sure that we have that regional comprehensive feel. So instead of being a mile wide and an inch deep, we're going to be about a half a mile wide and 3 inches deep in certain areas. We also wanted to go into the graduate degree areas, and we have our first graduate degree program, which was a Master's of Accounting. And our first cohort is starting here this fall, and we had over 50 applicants for this. And so there's a huge need. We also have 2 other programs that are being developed that haven't quite been approved yet in genetic counseling, which we have Intermountain Healthcare that just built a 400,000 square foot addition to the hospital, and genetic counselors are greatly needed. We also, with the technology, software development is another big program for us. We also have stayed true to our community college mission, where there are certain certificates and minors that we needed to add, so we have added those over the last 2 years or 3 years as well. We also have our community and continuing education. We have focused a lot on this. When I asked to collect the data, I got emails with 4 or 5 pages of data. These are the highlights, but we've done a great job with making sure that we have our community college offerings. What's really significant for us is the number that we have with concurrent enrollment, from going with a 135% increase in students, and you can see the number of courses, doubling the number of courses, so that we have students in our concurrent enrollment programs. The other significant piece for us is being an innovative county. And so this is a study that we found that really links what are the top innovative areas with regards to patents, how many patents are filed in a certain area. So all the red is hot spots. And all I see is a cloud of blue, but there's a red spot right where St. George, Utah is. And so we wanted to stay true to the innovative spirit of Washington County. And so a few years ago, we purchased an elementary school that was just outside of our campus across the street. And the state allowed us to land bank that institution, and we've turned it into Innovation Plaza. And this is not just for our faculty, staff, and students, but it is for our entire community. And it has really taken off. We have a couple of initiatives, and it really started with one gentleman who's on the right there. His name's Dr. Wayne Provost. He's a patent specialist, and he actually retired to St. George and just came off the street into my office and met with myself and the provost and said, "You only can walk your dog so many times a day. I want to help your students." And so all of you know his patents. If you've ever had the cereal box top, the little tab, that was his first patent. And he got a quarter of a penny for every cereal box sold in America for 20 years. So he also has the insulin pump and many other inventions. But you see from November 2016, he has over 350 ideas. There's 51 pending patents now. There's 13 businesses that he's helped our community, our faculty and staff create in our community. If you look at 51 pending patents, the American Inventors Academy ranked the top 100 universities in the world with regards to number of patents. And to get on the list, you have to have 25. And we right now, with our students, faculty, staff, and community members, have 51 pending patents. We also, with the community members, they can come, and in Innovation Plaza, there'll be a makerspace that will be free of charge for them. We also have our St. George Economic Development Corporation is located there, as well as our Business Resource Center that's located. And so this is a one-stop shop. This has that community college feel where people can come in, they can get a certificate. We are creating a certificate program in commercialization. We just had a capital venture fund that came in and have committed to raise $100 million by August to help students with seed money. So the last thing that I would share with you is why dual emission? Why are we embracing this? And I probably don't have to go into detail because we've discussed this all night long, but the efficiency is very important. I came from the state of Indiana where they had a very large Ivy Tech community college system. And during the downturn, they built buildings all over the state of Indiana. And then as I was leaving in 2014, the economy was getting better and these buildings were empty. And there were 3 or 4 Ivy Tech campuses that were close to Indiana State where I worked that they were consolidating, and it just wasn't efficient use of space. And so being able to have that continuum also helps with retention tools. We're faced with many students that come to Dixie State that are not university ready or not ready for a university degree, but they are ready for a tech degree or a certificate. And that will lead to some consistency where they come, they get comfortable, they get a certificate program, they're mentored, they know their advisors, they know the personnel on our campus, and we can help coach them to the next level where they get a minor or an associate's degree and then a baccalaureate and then maybe into a master's degree. And that really leads to the nimbleness that President Holland was talking about. It really allows us to be nimble. If there's a downturn in the economy, we can use those personnel for other things that we are doing on our campus. And so with that, I will thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.